People who twist words may try to pull you back in with guilt, pressure, or manipulation. They might say you're avoiding the issue or you're not willing to listen. But protecting your energy isn't avoidance, it's wisdom. It's knowing that some conversations require space and time before they can be productive again. Choosing to walk away also means trusting yourself to come back when the time is right, if it ever is. It means having faith that you don't need to solve every conflict in one sitting. It means knowing that your value and your truth don't depend on continuous debate. Your peace is worth more than exhausting yourself on endless back and forth. In protecting your energy, you create a boundary that others learn to respect. You teach people that your time, your emotions, and your well-being are not negotiable. And in doing so, you not only protect yourself, but also elevate the quality of every conversation you engage in moving forward. Owning your power begins with a deep knowing of who you are, beyond the noise, beyond the distortions, beyond the twists of others. It's a quiet confidence that doesn't need to shout to be heard. When you are grounded in self-awareness, you recognize your worth and your truth without needing constant validation from outside. This inner clarity becomes a fortress that manipulations simply cannot penetrate. Manipulation thrives in confusion and doubt. It feeds off uncertainty and hesitation. But when you own your power, you bring a calm certainty that unsettles those trying to control the narrative. You don't react impulsively. You don't get swept away by their games. Instead, you observe, you breathe, and you choose your response with intention. That quiet strength is often more powerful than any argument. Self-awareness isn't about perfection. It's about being honest with yourself, knowing your boundaries, your values, and your limits. It's about recognizing when someone is trying to distort your words or reality and refusing to let that distortion become your truth. When you stand firm in that awareness, their attempts to manipulate lose their grip because they can no longer define you. Owning your power means understanding that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to win every argument or convince every doubter. Your power comes from your integrity, your commitment to living authentically and speaking your truth, no matter the resistance. That authenticity radiates and creates a space where manipulations bounce off instead of sticking. When someone tries to twist your words or shift the story, owning your power lets you remain centered instead of reactive. You don't get pulled into the chaos. You don't feel compelled to defend yourself endlessly. You simply remind yourself, and when necessary, others, what you said, what you meant, and who you are. That steady presence shifts the energy of the conversation. This kind of power is not loud or aggressive. It's quiet, persistent, and unshakable. It's the power of someone who has done the work to understand themselves deeply and refuses to be shaken by external forces. It's the power that says, you may try to change the story, but you cannot change my truth. And that distinction changes everything. Owning your power also means forgiving yourself when you've been manipulated before. It means releasing the shame or guilt that comes with being caught in someone else's web. When you reclaim your self-awareness, you reclaim your ability to set boundaries, to speak up, and to walk away when needed. That reclamation is freedom. Standing in your power isn't about control over others. It's about control over yourself. It's about choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and truth over distortion. When you own that power, no one else's manipulations have the final word. Your voice, your reality, and your peace remain yours. Quiet, steady, and undeniable. There comes a moment, often quiet, often unexpected, when you're left sitting with the weight of a conversation you thought was clear. You spoke from the heart. You chose your words with care. And yet, somehow, by the end of it, your words don't sound like your own anymore. They've been twisted, reshaped, turned into something you never intended. That moment is disorienting. It makes you question not just what was said, but even who you are. In that space of confusion, the first thing you must do is return to yourself. Not to what they claimed you said, not to the version of you they're trying to project, but to the inner knowing. the place that holds the truth of your intention, the truth of your words. That place does not lie. That place doesn't second guess. It remembers. You are not here to defend a version of yourself that doesn't exist. You don't have to explain away someone else's misinterpretation of your honesty. What you owe yourself is a quiet, steady return to clarity. You owe yourself your own truth. Because once you know what you said and what you meant, the fog starts to lift. The distortion begins to lose its power. Now, people who twist words, they thrive in that fog. They depend on your doubt. They want you scrambling for explanations, over-apologizing, questioning your memory. That's the game. But when you're anchored in your truth, you don't move. You don't spin. You don't contort. You breathe. You stand still. And in that stillness, you become immovable. Knowing your truth doesn't mean shouting over someone. It means refusing to shrink just because someone else is uncomfortable with your clarity. It means holding the line, gently, firmly, and without apology. It means saying, "That's not what I said," and letting that be enough. You don't need to perform your sincerity for people who are determined not to see it. There will be people who want to twist your words because your truth exposes theirs. It's not personal, even when it feels deeply so. It's often a defense mechanism, a way for them to avoid facing themselves. And the most powerful thing you can do in that moment is not to react, not to retaliate, but to remain rooted in the truth you already know. Clarity doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to be loud. When you're grounded in what you meant, when you've done the work to speak with intention, you don't chase approval. You don't beg to be understood. You simply stand in the light of your own integrity, and that light is often more than enough to reveal what needs to be seen. So when someone starts twisting your words, pause, take a breath, go inward, ask yourself, what did I really say? What did I mean? And then let that be the compass that guides you. Not their version, not their spin, yours, only yours. There's a moment right before you respond where everything inside you wants to explode. Your heart races, your voice catches in your throat, and your mind begins building a wall of defenses. That's the moment, the space between provocation and reaction, that holds more power than you realize. It's in that moment you get to decide whether you give your peace away or protect it. When someone twists your words, misrepresents your intentions, or questions your truth, it's natural to feel the heat rise. You may feel cornered, misunderstood, betrayed. That emotional surge is valid. It tells you that something important is happening. But it doesn't have to control you. You don't have to hand over your emotional reins just because someone else is trying to pull the strings. People who manipulate conversations often thrive on the emotional chaos they create. They want to rattle you because when you're rattled, you lose your clarity. When you're triggered, it's easier for them to shift blame, to rewrite the narrative, to make you feel like the problem. Your reaction becomes their shield. Your anger becomes their excuse. And suddenly the focus is no longer on the original issue. It's on how you overreacted. That's why staying grounded matters. Not because you're suppressing emotion, but because you're mastering it. You can feel deeply and still speak slowly. You can be hurt and still remain steady. You can want to scream and still choose silence until you're ready to respond from a place of strength rather than pain. That restraint isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Staying emotionally grounded doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. It means choosing your response instead of surrendering it. It means breathing before speaking. It means noticing when your nervous system is hijacked and giving yourself the grace to pause. It's in that pause that your power lives, because anyone can react. It takes intention to respond. Sometimes people try to provoke you just to see if they still have access to your peace. And when you don't give it to them, when you remain composed, not cold, just calm, it unsettles them. Not because you're being distant, but because they can no longer control the outcome through your emotions. And that's when the dynamic begins to shift. You may not be able to control what they say, how they twist things, or how they behave, but you always get to decide who you become in the face of it. You get to choose whether your peace is negotiable. You get to choose if the storm outside gets to stir the quiet inside. That inner quiet, that's your sacred ground. Guard it like it's gold. When your feet are firmly planted in your own emotional truth, you don't need to flinch. You don't need to flail. You simply stand. And in that stillness, you communicate something louder than words. You are not here to be dragged into chaos you didn't create. You are here to rise above it. There's a strategy people use, sometimes consciously, sometimes not, where they shift the conversation just enough to make you feel off balance. One moment you're talking about what actually happened, the next you're defending a side issue you never even mentioned. And before you know it, the entire conversation is about something else entirely. That's not by accident. It's a tactic, and it's designed to distract you from your truth. In these moments, it becomes critical to stay tethered to your original message, not the one they invented, or not the one they're trying to steer you into, the one you actually meant. The message you brought to the table with honesty, clarity, and intention. Because once the focus shifts, your power starts to dissipate. Your voice gets lost in their spin. Your purpose gets tangled in their diversion. You don't have to follow them down every winding road. You don't need to respond to every curveball they throw. What you need is to return, again and again, if necessary, to your point. Your truth. Your words. Say it again. Then say it again. Not louder. Just clearer, with conviction, with peace, and with an unwavering sense that what you're saying matters. Repetition is not weakness. Repetition is strength. It's you refusing to let your message be derailed. It's you saying, I'm not here to chase the version of this story you're rewriting. I'm here to speak to what I know. That's not being stubborn. That's being rooted. That's being focused. And focus is exactly what they're trying to take from you. You may find that the more clearly you repeat yourself, the more uncomfortable they become. They may try harder to twist your words, to throw new accusations, to shift the blame onto you. That's okay. Let them try. You're not moving. You're not arguing every angle. You're not proving your worth through debate. You're simply standing by what you said. It's tempting to think that if you just explain it differently, or if you just give a little more context, they'll understand. But people who twist narratives don't always want understanding. They want control. And when you recognize that, you stop negotiating with confusion, you stop over-explaining, you stop giving away your voice just to keep the peace. What brings the conversation back to center is not persuasion, it's presence. It's the power of holding your ground with dignity. It's the calm certainty of repeating your message without apology. Not louder, just clearer. Because clarity doesn't need volume, it needs consistency. And when you stay consistent, the truth begins to speak louder than the noise. So each time the conversation gets pulled away, gently bring it back. Each time they misquote or mid-frame, return to what you actually said. Not to argue, but to realign. Not to fight, but to stand firm. That's how you stay in your power, by repeating your truth until it no longer needs defending. There's a subtle but powerful shift that happens when you stop arguing over facts and start speaking from your own experience. When you say, I said, instead of, you're lying about what I said, you shift the energy. You take the conversation out of the arena of blame and bring it into the realm of personal truth. That's where your strength lives, not in proving someone wrong, but in affirming what is true for you. I statements are not just a communication tool. They are a boundary. They are a line in the sand that says, this is mine, my words, my meaning, my reality. And when you speak from that place, it becomes harder for someone to twist it. Because you're not speaking about them. You're not labeling their behavior. You're grounding yourself in your own experience. And no one gets to own that but you. When you say, I meant or I felt, it stops the spiral before it starts. It removes the oxygen from the fire of defensiveness. You're not attacking, you're not accusing, you're clarifying, and people may still try to manipulate your meaning, but now the foundation is firmer. You're standing on your own truth, not chasing theirs. In conversations where words are turned against you, it's easy to slip into "you never" or "you always." But those phrases are open invitations to conflict. They provoke, they generalize, and they give the other person something to grab onto and refute. I statements, on the other hand, don't need to be argued with. They just are. They're not an attack, they're a reflection. Using I statements also keeps you anchored emotionally. It helps you stay grounded in what you can control: your voice, your intention, your delivery. You're not spinning in circles trying to dissect someone else's lie. You're not matching their chaos. You're simply saying, this is what I know to be true for me. And that kind of honesty has a quiet, undeniable power. Even when someone insists you meant something else, I statements bring you back to center. They remind you that you don't have to convince anyone. You're not in court. You're not on trial. You're stating your truth, not begging for belief. And when you stand in that kind of clarity, there's no need to escalate. People may still try to reframe what you said, but when your words begin with I, they carry a signature that can't be erased. They are rooted in self-awareness, and self-awareness is hard to argue with. It disarms manipulation without ever raising your voice. It brings dignity back into a conversation that's trying to pull you into defensiveness. So when the conversation turns murky, bring it back to you. Not in a self-centered way, but in a self-honoring way. Start with I, stay with I. Because when you speak from the ground of your own experience, no matter how loud the noise around you gets, your voice remains clear, steady, and unshakable. There's a specific kind of discomfort that settles in when you hear your own words come back to you, sounding foreign, twisted, rearranged, used as evidence in a story you never agreed to. It's a subtle violation, but it cuts deep. Because it doesn't just challenge what you said, it challenges who you are. And in that moment, you have a choice. Let it slide, or lovingly call it what it is. Naming the twist is not about confrontation. It's about clarity. It's saying, that's not what I said, or that's not what I meant, in a tone that doesn't accuse, but doesn't retreat either. You're not raising your voice. You're not matching their energy. You're simply making the invisible visible, bringing the distortion to light so it can't quietly shape the conversation. There are people who will twist your words not because they misunderstand you, but because it benefits them to recast you in a different role. They may say, you said you didn't care, when what you really said was, I need space to think. They may tell others, you attacked me, when all you did was speak about. The twist is subtle, but the impact is sharp. Calling it out, especially calmly, is an act of self-respect. It's not about catching them in a lie. It's about catching yourself before you get swept away in someone else's script. When you gently but firmly name the shift, you hold on to your own narrative. You say, I see what's happening here, without saying it with malice or rage. That awareness protects your voice from getting lost. You may be tempted to ignore the twist for the sake of harmony, to keep the peace, to avoid the discomfort. But every time you let someone reshape your words without speaking up, a piece of your self-trust quietly erodes. You begin to doubt what you said, what you meant, what you deserve to clarify. Speaking up isn't always easy, but silence often costs more. There's a way to call out the twist that doesn't provoke, it empowers. Hey, I don't remember saying it that way. Let me clarify what I meant. That doesn't reflect my intention. These are soft, steady ways to bring the conversation back to center. Not everything has to be a confrontation. Sometimes it's just a correction. Sometimes it's just truth setting itself straight. Even when someone insists they heard it differently, your job isn't to convince them. It's to honor what you know you said. Let them sit with their version if they must, but don't abandon yours. Naming the twist doesn't require debate. It only requires presence, the kind that doesn't flinch when the story gets altered. When you lovingly call out a twist, you teach people how to engage with you. You set a tone. You model what respect looks like in a conversation. And more importantly, you affirm to yourself that your words matter, your voice matters, and no one gets to take ownership of your truth but you. When someone offers a new version of what happened, it can feel like the ground beneath you is shifting. Suddenly, the story you knew, your experience, your reality, gets twisted into something unfamiliar. They might say, "That's not what really happened," or "You're misunderstanding." And with those words, they're inviting you to question everything you believed to be true. But you don't have to accept that invitation. Refusing the reframe is an act of courage. It's saying no to having your experience rewritten just because someone else wants to control the narrative. It's recognizing that your reality doesn't need to be negotiated or watered down to fit someone else's version. When you hold firm in your truth, you protect yourself from the confusion and doubt that come with constantly shifting stories. People who try to reframe a situation often do so to avoid accountability, to deflect blame, or to gain the upper hand. They want to create a reality where they look better or where you look wrong. And it's easy to get pulled into that game because their version can sound convincing. But just because it's presented with confidence doesn't mean it's yours to adopt. Saying no to a reframe isn't about shutting down communication or refusing to listen. It's about setting boundaries around what you will accept as your truth. You can hear their version without letting it rewrite your story. You can acknowledge their perspective, but still hold on to your own. Those two things are not the same. Refusing to accept a new version means trusting yourself more than their spin. It means anchoring your identity in your own memories, feelings, and intentions rather than in someone else's agenda. It means recognizing that your truth is valid, even if it doesn't fit the narrative they're trying to sell. When you refuse to reframe, you send a clear message. Your experience is not up for grabs. It's not a puzzle for others to piece together differently to suit their needs. It's your story, and you get to tell it in the way it actually happened. That kind of clarity can be unsettling for others, but it's liberating for you. You might face pressure, persistence, or even guilt trips to accept their version. They may say, "Why can't you just let it go?" Or "You're making this bigger than it is." But refusing to reframe isn't about holding grudges. It's about honoring your reality and your voice. It's about knowing that peace doesn't come from surrendering your truth, but from standing firmly in it. Choosing not to accept their version frees you from the endless back and forth of confusion and doubt. It lets you move forward with confidence and grace, knowing you're not bending to fit someone else's mold. Your story remains yours, and that is a powerful place to stand. There's a sacredness to your energy that often gets overlooked in the heat of difficult conversations. When someone twists your words or tries to control the narrative, it's easy to get pulled into a vortex of frustration, anger, and exhaustion. But your energy is precious. It's the fuel that powers your clarity, your peace, and your ability to show up fully in life. Protecting it is not selfish, it's essential. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is recognize when the conversation is no longer serving you. When the dialogue stops being a bridge to understanding and becomes a battlefield, that's a sign. When you find yourself repeating the same points over and over without being heard, or when the tone shifts from respectful to hostile, that's another sign. Listening to these signals is a form of self-care. Walking away doesn't mean you're giving up or admitting defeat. It means you are choosing to preserve your peace over winning an argument. It means you understand that some battles don't need to be fought at that moment, or at all. It means you're honoring your boundaries and your emotional well-being above the need to be right. Grace in walking away is what sets this apart from running away. It's about leaving with dignity, with kindness, and with self-respect intact. It's a quiet confidence that says, I've said what I needed to say. I've stood in my truth. Now I will protect myself by stepping back. There's no shame in this. There is only strength. When you protect your energy by choosing to disengage, you also open space for clarity to settle in. Sometimes stepping back allows emotions to cool, perspectives to shift, and healing to begin. It's a pause, not an ending. It's a moment of regrouping, not retreat. And in that space, you reclaim your power.